Okay. So as a quick reminder, energy efficiency has a fundamental role within climate action. It actually has 4 commitments within the Cooling Pledge that are related to energy efficiency. And these are number 6, which is the increase on the market penetration of high efficient air conditioning equipment. Number 7, for example, the establishment of minimum energy performance standards. Number 8, the establishment of updated public procurement policies and guidelines. And the third one that is related to the reduction of HFCs and the phase out of HCFCs. Okay, so just as a quick intro, United for Efficiency provides independent, tailored technical support to countries to transform their markets towards energy efficiency products. From the cooling spectrum, we focus on the following products: domestic and commercial refrigerators, room air conditioners and heat pumps, ceiling fans, and data centers. But we also work on electric motors and systems, power distribution transformers, and lighting. So we provide this technical support through what we call the integrated policy approach, which is a structure that encompasses the 5 areas that you see here on the screen. The implementation of policies, regulations, and standards, starting with the minimum energy performance standards, but also sustainable public procurement, and also policies related to refrigerants. Then the supporting policies, which include labeling scheme and communication campaigns or awareness campaigns, monitoring, verification, and enforcement, the development and implementation of financial mechanisms, and waste management. So very quickly, to explain how all these elements interact with each other, I'm showing this slide that basically what it shows is that in a typical market that is unregulated, we have a bunch of products with different type of efficiency, with different type of performance. So the first step is the implementation or the update of the minimum energy performance standards. So this is a regulation that defines the minimum criteria, the minimum efficiency levels and performance standards or quality criteria that the products must have to be commercialized in a given market. So this, of course, has to be based on the market dynamic of that particular country. So market assessment and market knowledge is very important. And with this policy, we ban a portion of the market and take out what are the inefficient and obsolete products from that market. Then we have the labeling that differentiates the performance of the remaining products in the market, and therefore it provides powerful information for the end users to make informed decisions. Then the financial mechanisms to bridge the price gap between the inefficient products that usually are cheaper against the high efficient ones. And then the monitoring, verification, and enforcement. There is no point on having a policy or a regulation in place if there's not going to be a monitoring, verification, and enforcement framework established as well. So this is to make sure that the products that are commercialized inside the market, but also at the entry point when they're entering the market, are compliant with the regulation. So this means working with laboratories, with the testing standards, with the customs, and many other stakeholders. Last but not least, environmental and management, to make sure that those products, those inefficient and obsolete products we are taking out of the market are going to be treated and disposed in a correct manner, especially the cooling appliances that, as you know, have the refrigerants, foam agents, and other type of material that should be disposed in a safe manner. Okay. So I wanted to come back 1 second to the policy aspect, because this is the cornerstone of any market transformation project or process. So in here, what I wanted to show you is how different energy efficient policies have an impact in the market. These interventions, for example, shape the distribution of the products as a function of the energy efficiency, which is the dotted black line, in different ways. So as we mentioned, the minimum energy performance standards is the first step that bans a portion of the market. But what also does is to pushes manufacturers to produce more energy efficiency products, to foster the technological innovation. So this is key. The second step is the addition of an energy label, like we said, to provide this powerful tool to the end users to know what they're buying. And therefore, we stimulate the market again. And therefore, the curve is leaning, once again, to the right, to the energy efficient high side. But we can give one step forward with implementation of high energy performance standards. And these are usually used in the public procurement from state entities to leverage the public purchasing power. So just to emphasize here the importance and the impact that this type of policies has, because these are effects that are immediate in the market once these are enforced. And also the importance for countries to have this in place, because those that don't and fall behind in the development of the MEPS or their update, that usually should be around 5 years, take the risk to becoming dumping grounds. So from our experience in more than 30 countries, so from our experience working in more than 30 countries, we noticed that successful implementation of policies and regulations depend on 3 aspects. On the one hand, we have the engagement and the commitments from the local stakeholders. This is important because the participation of the local stakeholder not only provide valuable input, but also is to take ownership of the regulation, that they are part of the regulation and that it's easier for them to follow up once enforced. Secondly, knowing the market and the country context. And third, international best practices, and this is to have a reference. So we know that the development and implementation of MEPS can be a challenging process for many countries. The MEPS have to be realistic because we need them to be ambitious enough to make an impact in the market, but at the same time, they have to be applicable because the market has to be able to provide the products with the requirements and at a reasonable price. So what we have noticed is that many countries might face difficulties because they may lack the knowledge on their own market or also on the global one. What products are out there that are already available for other countries too? Maybe there's lack of harmonized policies in the region, and therefore there is no reference whether for the region or globally. And last but not least, technical limitations. For example, what is the scope of products that the norm should include? What are the parameters and the metrics that should be used to assess the energy efficiency of the products? What test methods we have to reference to measure the energy efficiency? What are the appropriate levels to set the MEPS and also to define the different classes of the labels? So against this background, U4E have developed 2 important tools that I wanted to show you, which are the model regulation guidelines and the technical and the public procurement technical specifications. So to support this process, on the one hand, we have the model regulation, which is a document for setting the energy efficiency levels and to define other key criteria, both quality and performance criteria, that the regulation should have. It also includes levels on the refrigerants, ODP and GWP. And it has been designed in a way that could be readily implemented by countries or can be taken as a reference, like we said before, when they have to update their MEPS. And just for you to know that these guidelines have been developed in a collaborative approach together with different stakeholders from the industry, from associations, from the academia, in order for them to capture what we call the international best practices. And in here you can see the ones we have for cooling, air conditioning, refrigerators, domestic, commercial, and off-grid too, and ceiling fans. So just for you to know that these are such a reference document, a starting base, and we encourage you to tailor this based on the market features of your country. So similarly, we have the Sustainable Public Procurement Guidelines. So these are aimed for public procurers, for the maintenance staff, for technical officers that are involved in the definition of the tendering process, the requirements of the bid for the public purchases. And another use could be for the definition of the requirements in pilot projects, and also, for example, for incentive schemes. So these are different from the MEPS because they have a higher level of requirements. And in here, again, for the cooling, we have refrigerators, air conditioners. We're about to launch this year the heat pumps guideline. And this very same week, we have released the one on data centers. And I'm going to stop here just 1 second, because as you might know, data centers now are becoming a huge topic. They are very energy intensive facilities, and they're the second, cooling systems are the second most consuming aspect from the cooling, from the data center, sorry. So they usually consume between 20 and 50% of the energy consumption in data centers are coming from the cooling systems. So in here, there's a huge potential also for improvement. Okay, so another tool we have available is the country saving assessments. So the impact of the adoption of the MEPS is reflected in these reports. These reports provide detailed information on the potential financial, economical, and environmental savings from the implementation of the levels that we suggest in the model regulation guideline. So in here, the reports compare different scenarios with different levels of the MEPS, so you can have a reference of the impact of such regulation in your country. And these are available for more than 156 countries. We have also available global assessments that are just for ceiling fans and heat pumps, and also regional assessments for Africa and Asia that group a number of countries, so you can see the potential when the regulations are implemented at a regional harmonized level. Okay, so and just for you to have like a flavor of the type of information the reports have, here we have the potential savings from the implementation of the MEPS for the three cooling products. This is commercial refrigerators, from residential refrigerators and ACs. And in here, what we see is the progression of the savings from the year 2022 that has been taken as a reference when implementing the model regulation. And potential savings by 2040 can reach 650 terawatt hour, or almost 600 million tons of CO2. So another tool I wanted to talk about was the product registration system, because this is a system that allows for loading products, which must be registered before entering a specific market. So basically what it does is to allow the creation of a database with products and information from the market for the proper monitoring and to check the compliance of the regulations in the market. And what is interesting is that this type of product can be utilized, oops, sorry, there. And what is interesting is that this type of product can be implemented in a regional fashion, and therefore information from one country can be shared at a regional level, and therefore prevent for products to be tested multiple times, to share information and awareness among neighboring countries. The product registration system is actually a good example of a tool that is implemented in a regional or harmonized fashion. And I just wanted to highlight the importance of working together in a regional way to attain multiple benefits. On the regulatory side, of course, integrated and common energy efficiency policies can help attain more effective and sustainable market transformation. It also helps a correct mapping of what's going on in the region and to avoid isolated efforts or to duplicate actions, to make a better use of limited resources, but also, and I think that this was mentioned at some point, it's to reduce commercial barriers in order to have a bigger market, to have a bigger demand, and therefore it's a different purchasing power. And of course, something very important, the knowledge and information exchange, like we are doing today, not only in terms of information, but also capacities, the tools, the methods, the information, the infrastructure, for example, the labs. So from B4E, we encourage countries to think about the type of efforts in a regional fashion. And here, just one example very quickly of a project that we have developed in SADC and East African Community and the Southern African Development Community. In total, we work with 21 countries, and the project focused on the development of a regional harmonized minimum energy performance standards. So we facilitate the stakeholders' engagement. We support it with technical support in the development of the regulations and different meetings for finally being accepted. The next step that we are now undertaking is the national adoption. We're supporting countries to apply this at the national level, and as well with public awareness activities and capacity building to different stakeholders like the customs, like the standards organization, and many others. So this is one example of the work done at the regional level, but we also work at the national level. But for this, I'm going to pass to my colleague Hubert that will tell us the example from Ghana. So thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you very much, Soledad. And as U4E has rightly mentioned, a lot of the documents are available online. Now, how did Ghana fall into this category? You know, as much as possible, what I keep on saying is that we do not need to reinvent the wheel. We first saw these documents online, and we decided to pick them and look at the model regulation U4E had come up with. So standards and labeling, one of them. But then we also looked ahead to pick the sustainable procurement guideline. And Ghana developed its own. And the major thing we had to do was to train public institutions. I don't know how it works in your countries, but in Ghana, government agencies are bulk procurers. They procure large quantities of cooling appliances. So we thought that could be one of the key things we could do to be able to do that. So first of all, green public procurement has been introduced in Ghana. And what we've done is to try to train public institutions, procurement officers, and take them through what the requirements are. Now, what are the drivers in all of this? We know climate is one of them. We know demographic factors will also play a role. And so there are a lot of considerations to look at. I have tried as much as possible to prepare a presentation which I know will be shared. So for the sake of time, I will go through it And then you can also have the documents to go through the details in terms of what to look out for. So this is the background. If you look at the cooling statistics in Ghana, basically air conditioning is a major factor. And we haven't paid attention to it because it is one of the consuming equipment in our homes. And in industries, this is also looking at electric motors. But air conditioning is no more a luxury. In Ghana, when you see a building, you assume that this building belongs to a rich person because there's an air conditioner installed. Now, that is not the case. Everyone is trying to what? Do what we call susu, which is little contributions to make sure that they're able to get a cooling device to install in their homes. So we realize that cooling is actually rising. And so the public procurement had to come in. In Ghana, we have what we call the Public Procurement Act, and we also have the Public Procurement Regulation. The Public Procurement Regulation takes into consideration sustainability as one of its criteria. However, it does not give the specifics in terms of what to look out for in terms of sustainability. So what we decided to do was to make sure that the Public Procurement Regulation 2022, which looks at environmental and sustainability issues, now takes into consideration specific technical criteria that will help procurement officers and then also financial officers to be able to procure the items. Now, the training basically wanted to look at those involved in the procurement process. So 1 is the procurement officer, 2 is the financial person who pays the bills, 3 is administrators, and also the estate and facility managers. You need to bring all these people together when you are talking about green public procurement. So we decided to take them through energy efficiency ratings, type of refrigerants, the energy guide, what to look out for, energy consumption as a criteria, and then life cycle cost. Life cycle cost because initial cost is usually a problem, but when you consider the operational cost, the running cost, and the maintenance cost, then you are talking about the total cost of owning the appliances. So tying it to air conditioners and also what the requirements are under the Montreal Protocol and Kigali Amendment, it is very clear that the developed countries have a longer period, to phase out some of these refrigerants. However, there is an issue. In Europe, when it comes to the HCFCs, timelines are very clear. 90% reduction by 2015 and total phase out by 2020. In the case of developing countries, in 2025, we are looking at 67.5% and total phase out by 2030. So the question remains, what happens to the HCFCs, R22 air conditioners that have been phased out in developed countries as far back as 2020? And that is where the issue of the dumping we have been talking about. So what Ghana decided to do was to collaborate with the Environmental Protection Agency to establish a quota system and issue a public notice to indicate that regardless of your efficiency requirement, if your cooling appliance contains an HCFC, it will not be registered and allowed into the country. And that was the beginning of our success story in implementing the HCFCs. Now, when you look at this data I've provided, clearly you can see that the volumes of R22 were about 51%, and the numbers kept on reducing as we enforced the public notice. And in 2023, virtually no R22 equipment was coming into the country. So just following in the steps of Maldives, Ghana also enforced our requirement at least more than 5 years before the time period. And I think we should encourage countries to look at that. Even though you have enough time to do this, you can also leapfrog. And so we are hoping to replicate this we have done for cooling, ACs, and then refrigerators, to also doing same for the HFCs under the Kigali Amendment requirement. We have done it under HCFC, and we believe we can do the same. So the same will be applied. We are going to set criteria that will help us leapfrog and introduce more hydrocarbons into the system. Now, we have done that by looking at the labels, energy efficiency labels. So you have the ratings just like Maldives, star ratings, but we have also introduced something unique, which is to indicate the refrigerants and the global warming potential as part of the energy guide. So we have brought two things together, efficiency and then the refrigerant component, so that consumers can make an informed decision, importers can make an informed purchase decision from the factories before they even bring the products into the country. The same applies to the air condition, efficiency ratings, and then we have provided the annual energy consumption, the refrigerant it contains, and its global warming potential. Now, looking at all of this and the product bans under HFCs, the timelines are clear for developed countries. For developing countries, it has been stretched well enough. And we believe that we cannot continue keeping and receiving these products and having a lot of banks in our environment. So we decided to introduce the green public procurement. And the difference between green public procurement and sustainable public procurement basically is consideration of the environment. When you emphasize so much on the environment, then you are looking at green public procurement. However, sustainability looks at the economic, social, and the environment as well. So basically, this is how the sustainable procurement process looks like. I've mentioned green, economic, and social. And then you also have what we call the assessment area we need to look at. So efficiency and the refrigerants have to go hand in hand in order to be able to make a good justification for cooling. So all of these have barriers. And some of the barriers are when a procurement officer wants to go for an equipment, there are demanding resources and limited requests. So the challenge usually is, how do I use resources from government to procure high efficient appliances which are also very expensive? Unfortunately, there is a myth. They say the procurement officers probably have what we call 10%. There is an interest. That is why they want to buy an air condition which is more expensive than the lower one. But we need to move away from that thought and look at what we call putting all of this together and achieving environmental benefits, political benefits, and then also the net zero agenda. So this is what basically happens in the case of Ghana. When procurement is done, always consider what we call lowest price criteria. That is what always happens. But we are saying that price should not be the only criteria. You need to move away from the price to other consideration. Price will only take care of the purchase cost. You do not look at the operational cost and the disposal cost. Now, when you consider all of this together, that is what we call the total cost of ownership. And so our green public procurement training basically was to make sure that government agencies were moving away from what we call the lowest price criteria to a new criteria we call the most economically advantageous tender, the MEPS method. And the MEPS method allows you to set a criteria that will be specific. So I'm sharing this information because the problem will be, how do you set a criteria to get efficient air conditioners with low GWP? Using the MEPS method, it allows you to set weighted averages and doing a scoring. So I will take just two examples because the slides will be shared with you. Number one is energy efficiency. You are able to set a criteria based on the efficiency level. So in our case, we are allocating 20 marks for efficiency, minimum 3-star, 5 points is issued. If you bring us a better technology, you have a greater mark, 5-star, another mark, in that order. So you are able to weight the scoring and give advantage to products that are more efficient. However, The more efficient the product is, the more expensive it is. So compensation will be made during the life cycle cost analysis, where you are taking into consideration the running and operational cost. And you see that you can allocate about 40% max to that. The MEPS method also allows you to set another criteria based on the refrigerant. And so for the first time, procurement officers can set a criteria for efficiency and refrigerant requirements. Under refrigerant requirements, you do not need to mention the refrigerant because then you become biased in procurement. So you can set your criteria based on the global warming potential and say that air conditioners that have a global warming potential more than 700 will score 0 points if they bid for the tender. So ideally, you are going to push the market to make sure that to take part in the government tender, you are bringing in cooling appliances which have global warming potentials probably less than 700. And that is where you can look at the R32s as alternative HFCs, or better still, R290 as the best alternative option. So this is what we have been able to do, and picking from UNEP, UNEP helped us very well to come up with a criteria. They helped us also with the training tool, and we first established our first training to the Ghana Health Service, where we took them through the process. And they have also come up with a tool that helps you do the analysis. So you do not have to sit down, put pen and paper, and start doing calculations. There is a tool developed by UNEP U4E that helps you to do the evaluation and decide which product will best fit for the procurement criteria. It also does the, what we call the baseline analysis and then the sustainable public procurement projection for you to decide which project will at least fly for you. Now, in all of this that we have said, it's important that energy efficiency is a requirement. The refrigerant we are all talking about has an effect on the globe. And I'm sharing this slide so that we look at what we are saying. Our collective actions can help not go beyond the 1.5 degrees. However, if you and I have the opportunity to set criteria that can give us economics of scale, set criteria for manufacturers to give us products that will meet our requirements, then we can change the world. However, if we do not do that, it says that our inactions by the year, please, I don't know, which year is this? Can anybody help me? The year 2100, is that the case? Well, I don't know where I'll be by then. My friend Ali from Iraq, the year 2100, where will you be? So it only tells us that posterity will be judging all of us. We need to do something today for the future generation and then the next generation that is yet to come. So that in case they ask, what did Ali, what did Hubert, what did Leslie, what did Amir do as global cooling pledge focal persons, we can say we helped reduce this. But if we cannot say anything, then this is where the future lies ahead of us. So let's be champions. Let's adopt public procurement. It can indeed cause economies of scale and give us the best cooling equipment in our environment. Thank you very much for your audience. The next slide here. Oh. Oh, because of time, should I give Ubo the chance? Should I give her the chance? Okay, so thank you very much for the audience. And also, I know we have been very exhausted. A long day, Saturday. In Ghana, by now, we should be by the beach. But we are all here still working. I don't know in Morocco because I am teasing her, you know. So just for the sake of time, we just have some few questions, some reflections to make. And as we said, we need to also make way for my sister from Nigeria to also share her experience. But for example, we have this for your audience. What are the current national plans or strategies? So as it stands, do focal persons here even have the MEPS in place? Do you have regulations in place? And if you don't, what are the strategies in getting that? So one of them is that you have a model, U4E model, don't reinvent the wheel. Kindly go to the website, take a look at it, and it says criteria for all countries where you can look at that. So Leslie, you have the floor to share some ideas. And please, any of the questions, you can respond to it so that we have a feeling and have an idea of what is the current situation in your country, how can we share ideas so that we can all move together. Thank you very much. Yes, Leslie.
Yeah, thank you, Hubert. And again, I continue to be immensely impressed with what is happening in Ghana. And I think you guys are doing a tremendously good job there. I just want to share very quickly the situation for Grenada and maybe for some of the other islands in the Caribbean. So because we have an economic bloc called CARICOM, there is a regional standards body called the Caribbean Regional Organization for Standards and Quality, CROSQ we call it for short. And what CROSQ does is that it develops these standards and presents it to the member states for adoption at the country level. So they have developed these energy efficiency labeling standards that includes MEPS that countries have adopted. And in Grenada's case, we have adopted the standard in 2022. And we felt that these standards were ambitious enough to gain the kind of traction and attention that we wanted. But lo and behold, energy efficiency in the rack sector is moving at such a rapid rate that we soon found out months afterwards that these standards were already obsolete. And so we needed to make them more ambitious and to develop them further. So we went back to the local standards body to say, hey, we need to revise these standards because already they are obsolete. We want more energy efficient appliances. And the conversation here was that this is not a typical approach. We need to have these standards in place for at least 2 years before we can have them revised. Taking into consideration, standards development takes about 24 months. So we are in the situation now that we are using standards that we established in 2022, that since 2022 and 2023, we wanted to revise them to make them more ambitious. And so we're just at the stage where the local standards body are willing to engage us to make these standards more ambitious by revision. And so that is one of the issues that you'll have to contend with, because energy efficiency in the rack sector is moving at a very rapid rate. It's not only because of the inverter technology now, but also the thermodynamic properties of the refrigerant, the designs by the manufacturers, and then we have the issue of improving the thermal insulation and comfort of the buildings, and so all of that has to be put into sharp focus. And so with MEPS, there's always the need to do constant revision to make them more ambitious and to attract the most energy efficient appliances that come into the country. So I just wanted to share that experience to alert everybody in the room that these MEPS, after its establishment, can become obsolete very, very quickly because of the rate of the industry and technology advancements. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Sorry, maybe
okay.
I can add just a reflection on that. I understand that the process for getting the maps are a little bit cumbersome and long, and we have to update actually the more regulations periodically, so I can understand that. But an option is that in the new regulation, you can have progressive levels. So you already take into account what should be the level in 2 years, and 4 years, and 6 years. So you have a regulation that is going to cover a longer period and still going to be effective. So this is one of the approaches of also on the more regulation and SPP guidelines.
Exactly. And just to add to that, what Ghana decided to do was to raise the star rating. So we had it up to 5 stars. we set a certain minimum efficiency level. Now we have increased it to 7 stars, which means that the bandwidth has been increased. So anytime at all, we can set a criteria based on 4 stars or 5 stars, which will allow for future technologies. So those are some of the things that we can do. I think we have UK, Zimbabwe, Togo, no, Mauritius and Togo in that order. So UK first, Zimbabwe next, Mauritius and Togo in that order.
Thanks very much for some great presentations, and it's very useful to be able to learn from these, and as you say, to plagiarise. We do have some MEPS in place in the UK for a number of appliances, but I was interested in the questions about, or the comments about commercial refrigeration and data centres, and perhaps you can elaborate. I'm specifically interested in the supermarket display cabinets, but perhaps you can elaborate a little bit on what you mean by commercial refrigeration, and also what's included in the data centres. Is it the server itself, etc.? So, yeah, perhaps you can elaborate if possible, please.
Yeah, thank you for the questions, very interesting. For the commercial refrigerator, that's actually a sector that's a little bit complex because you have a wide variety of products. In the MOL regulation, we have included recommendations for the display cabinets that are the ones of the supermarket, the vending machines, the ice cream for scooping. So usually, each of these products have a different test standard and everything, so they are treated differently, but we have defined in those categories the requirements. So I don't know if I'm replying your question, but yes, includes the different type of products. And then on regards the data centers, yes, we're including, these are very straightforward guidelines with technical recommendations. So in the case of data centers, we're included the IT, of course, but also all the different KPIs, that is the key performance indicators. So this is the power usage effectiveness, the cooling ratio, the renewable ratio as well. So the water usage effectiveness, that is also very important. And also aspects on lighting, on motors. So it's a very comprehensive document. It's very complex with data centers because it's a new area. There's not so much information available, but these are like the basic criteria. The KPI are like the basic requirements or the basic metrics that all data centers are measuring.
That's really helpful, and I'm sure we will take a look at it and use it in the development of our UK cooling strategy. So thanks very much, really helpful.
Exactly, Graham, very helpful, because that's what we did, and it's not just about capacity. Household refrigerators for the Ghanaian regulation is looking at capping it at 1,500 liters. But as you rightly mentioned, commercial refrigerators, we are looking at the showcase, the ice cream machines, and all of that. So the scope in the IEC standards are very clear, and the guide can help you do that. So Zimbabwe, your flag is down, or you have the floor?
Yeah, thank you very much to U4E and to Ghana for sharing the information and experiences. Yes, indeed, Zimbabwe has just developed as part of the regional project, the MEPS. And the country has even gone further to include projects on MEPS in its revised country statement on NDC 3.0. But I think the presentation clearly shows that it's not just developing the standards. You need the regulations to enforce that, as well as the enforcement of that. So I think we still have a long way to go as a country, and I think maybe we were a bit too ambitious to include it in the country statement, but I think we stand here to get support and continue working with the U4E to make sure that we elaborate them further, as well as the public procurement regulations. But however, remember, most of these equipment for us, most of them we import them. South Africa, yes, it's okay because they are part of the regional bloc, but most of our gadgets come from China, and I think dealing with the importation and the control of importation of gadgets, some are coming illegally, some are coming formally. That really presents a serious challenge of which we might need very strong regulations and also a dialogue to make sure that we protect either our borders and make sure that whatever equipment comes in, we are on the same page. And I think there's also this challenge of the cheapest code. So I think we also need to engage the public procurement authorities so that they start to appreciate the need to include this. So I think there's need for really a serious dialogue in country and raise that awareness on the need. Most of these people, they don't even know what HFCs are anyway. Then you start talking about global warming potentials, and so I think we really need a strategy to raise awareness so that people start appreciating the need to adopt these sustainable cooling mechanisms. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Millward. And as you rightly said, awareness needs to be created at that level. Otherwise, we are the ones who understand this language. If you tell a procurement person global warming potential, he does not know what it is. So there should be a clear effort to also train. And that's why we have capacity building options. You know, these options have to be taken advantage of. So Mauritius, now I see Togo, Panama joins, and Morocco joins. We are supposed to be at the beach on Saturday, but it looks like we want to stay longer, so no problem. Mauritius.
Yes. Actually, I just wanted to mention that we have, actually we are enforcing the MEPS through a regulation since March this year. We have adopted the SADC guidelines issued by U4E, but we are encountering, there's a 6-month moratorium before actual application for importers to deal with the regulations, because previously we had regulations which used EER and SEER. They are used to that, and in the U4E regulations, we have CSPF, the Coefficient Seasonal Performance Factor, and the ISO standards. So the shift from EER to ISO is a bit difficult to grasp for the importers. We have been having a one-to-one meeting with them, but it's going to go ahead since the regulation is already announced and it'll be applicable in September. And we also have a project under the Kigali implementation plan for MEPS for other air conditioners. The one we are enforcing is on household, residential and commercial for 12 kilowatt, below 12 kilowatt. But for the MEPS under the Kigali implementation plan will be for above 12 kilowatt for commercial ones. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much, and that's great. Again, Ghana revised its regulation to make sure that that was catered for. So awareness needs to be created. For the importer, he's a business person or she's a business person. They are just thinking of how to make the money. But the standard is what the factories or manufacturers need to be able to provide the product. So whether SEER, TCSPF, or CSPF, these are all matrices that are used. And the manufacturers understand it because you are making reference to standards. So we need to create awareness to the importers to understand that we are trying to give advantage to the new technology, as Leslie rightly mentioned. The cooling space is changing, and you cannot continue maintaining the EER ratings. So it is one of the things you need to do under your Kigali. We have expanded our scope up to 65 kilowatts. So Ghana is being very ambitious to cover all the cooling. And a lot of education needs to be done from the Montreal Protocol level and then from the energy efficiency level. So we can take cues from some of that. So I have Togo, Panama, and then we will hear from Nigeria on her submissions to these questions as well.
Okay, thank you very much, and congratulations for the presentation also. I think to respond or to contribute to your questions, to adopt in our countries, in my concern, I think we will build on Kigali Amendment implementation actions, and we can also assess or conduct assessment of energy performance of all equipment to establish a baseline and also a baseline of in terms of energy consumption. We can complete with adopting policies of minimum energy performance standard and enhance the capacity of actors and suppliers, sensitize them to import or to buy new material. And I think in terms of barrier, as in my country, we have the issue of dumping. Many people are buying used equipment or material because of the level of means. They are thinking that used material is cheaper, but in terms of consumption, according to the time or by using them, they are consuming so much energy. So we will also sensitize the population and work closely with suppliers. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. It's good to hear what is happening in Togo as well. And one thing we must bear in mind is that the complexity of every country coming up with its own regulation is also affecting the manufacturers. So just like you have for the EU regulations, it's important to also adapt regional regulations by harmonization. So I know the SID islands, states are also having this regional block. We have REACRI, we have ECRI, ECOWAS, and then we have SACRI, which Mauritius also mentioned. So Mauritius did not have to come up with its standards. They have taken the regional one and they are working with that. So these are some of the things you can consider. If your country does not have the initial regulation, you can adapt the regional one and that becomes a baseline. So I give the chance to Panama.
Sorry,
and
just
I think,
if I can
okay.
add something there. I don't quite catch if Togo has the regulation in place or not. Togo, if you can just clarify that.
She wants to know if you have the energy efficiency regulation in place, or you are using the ECOWAS, or you are using Ghana's regulation.
Just, yeah, sorry, I didn't quite catch if Togo has a MEPS in place or not yet.
Yes, I think we are, as Ghana in the ECOWAS region, and supposed to use the ECOWAS regulation, but we have some problems to control our borders. So if one country in the region adopts the regulation, it's not very applied because of the borders issues.
Yeah, I think that the regulation in ECOWAS.
So some materials prohibited in Ghana, for example, can be used in Togo.
Yes,
and
totally.
vice versa.
Because you have Ghana, you have Nigeria.
Yeah.
We are also about to start a project in Ivory Coast on cooling products as well. So all neighboring countries are, it would be great to have harmonized maps like Hubert was just mentioning.
Okay, so Panama, Morocco is back, or now you want to go to the beach? Okay, so Panama, and then Morocco comes in, and then Bhutan. Yes.
Thanks for the presentation. Well, my question is more related to the transition, the AFC to other gases. In Panama, we're facing challenge in the transition from AFC to low GWP refrigerants, especially the hydrocarbons like isobutane. And one concern is flammability, which is often not being properly addressed, along with the need to certify technicians. And my question is, how is Ghana handling this transition? And if do you have training or certification program in place? And the second question is regarding to the final disposal or of recovered of HFC, particularly the mixed one that can be reused due to change in their chemical composition. If do you have access to incineration facilities or other destruction methods? How are you managing the equipment scrapping? And if another country has experience of this, it will be great to share.
All right. So, so first of all, the transition, HFCs to hydrocarbons. There is always that discussion about flammability, and you cannot run away from it. But what we need to remember is that even in the case of refrigerators, we move from R134A, which is HFC, to R600, which is also flammable. However, we are okay to use R600 in the refrigerators. So why don't we deal with the issue of flammability through training? Because these technicians are able to take care of the handling of R600, which is flammable. Now, in our homes, the example we keep on giving is that nothing is flammable than gas. Yet we use gases in our kitchen. Is that true or false? We are okay to use gas. What is more flammable than gas? So it's about setting in criteria, and those issues or concerns about flammability will always arise. But there's a solution. The solution is that you need to train technicians. So what Ghana has done is that we are passing a regulation to certify technicians and make it a profession so that only qualified technicians can operate on these equipments. Otherwise, you promote the technology. The next thing you see is that there's a leakage. Somebody is taking a welding machine to go and fix a leakage. And then, boom. Then they say, the cooling pledge, Energy Commission said we should go for hydrocarbons. And now it has become a bomb in people's homes. So we need to focus on the technicians. Train them, certify them, and then people will feel belonging to it because it becomes a profession. And they'll be proud to be called technicians because they are certified and they can handle the refrigerants. Now, in terms of how do we handle it, the Environmental Protection Agency also has an act which allows companies to be registered on the dismantling and handling. So you have recycling, reclamation of the gas, and then also the destruction of it. So we have incinerators. So far, it's just one incinerator we have. And the last time we started the program in 2012, we did not have any. So we had to work with Melt Water, one of the companies, to take it to a neighboring country to do the destruction. But now we have one incinerator which we can work with. And we think that the life cycle refrigerant management Japan spoke about earlier is some of the things we need to look at. They have the best way of handling some of these refrigerants. So why do we want to reinvent the wheel? Let's just learn from each other. And when they share such case studies, we look at how best we can take it. I think there's more. Nigeria will address more on that. So let me give the chance to Bhutan and then Nigeria. Morocco, yes. No, Morocco first. Bhutan, okay. Ladies first. Let me pay courtesy to ladies first. So Morocco.
And I think it must be accompanied by some regulation for control in the market, especially when it comes for the when it concerns the management of how to manage the informal sector. It's the problem.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much. And you rightly said, I even believe that instead of dealing with the importer, let's even deal with the factory as the first awareness, so that you have the regulation, you go to the manufacturer, and that's what Ghana did. A delegation from the Energy Commission where I work, and the Ghana Standards Authority went to China. We partnered with the Chinese embassy to give us the top 10 exporters of cooling devices. So we were in GRI, Media, TCL, to take them through the Ghanaian regulation. And they were surprised because for the first time, a regulator from Africa had visited and said, this is what we want going forward. And that is the benchmark. We have set it already. So, and we went through the embassy. So the Chinese government cannot say they are not aware, because we have gone to meet their top 10 exporters and told them what we are looking for going into the future. So these are some of the things I think we can do. So Bhutan, and then we have Nigeria.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations to Ghana on your successful initiatives and programs. Now that you have mentioned issues related to increasing number of population being able to afford air conditioning systems or equipment, be it government systems or other entities, I would like to understand if the eco-fridge program have looked into the replacement or the analysis of the number of the systems that have been replaced in the energy system, which can be also viewed as a positive influence to the energy consumption. Yeah, that's all. And I also see a rationale in incentivizing replacement. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Yes, the eco-fridges looked at that. You know, Morocco rightly said, the discussion should be, how do you convince the consumer? Because he's looking at his pocket. This is what I can afford. But he forgets that you buy it cheap and you pay more in running and operating it. So the messaging is very important in energy efficiency and discussing cooling. So we must make sure that when we are talking to consumers, we place the messaging to talk about the equipment, the operational costs, the running costs, and the amount you save in your pockets. So in Ghana, what we usually tell them is that the savings you can make could at least put a child to school.
Yeah.
So instead of paying probably $50 initially because it's cheap, and you pay more for your bills, over $150, why don't you buy it at $100 and pay maybe $10 for your bill? And that is the savings you can make. So the messaging is very important. And as I said, eco-fridges also looked at taking back the old one and replacing. Now we are moving further. We are trying to scale it up. Eco-fridges was just a pilot, and we are saying that let's move away from the traditional loan schemes to also the climate fund. Article 6. And please, we all have to go back and talk to our climate officers. Take advantage of Article 6. It's there for the taking. And look at the possibilities. Ghana submitted cooling as part of our NDC 2.0, where we talked about green cooling. And now we have taken advantage in partnership with the Swiss government. We are working with CLIC and GIZ to take advantage of what we call green cooling, to leapfrog from HFC, Panama, that's the transition. We are leapfrogging from HFCs to now hydrocarbons under the green cooling. So again, let's not reinvent the wheel. We can share notes, and then you also engage your climate officers and see how best you can take advantage of these schemes. So I would now hand over to Nigeria to also share their contributions as far as these questions are concerned. Questions are gone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ghana. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for setting the tone. All right, so for Nigeria, I will start by, like I heard what everybody's contribution was on the MEPS. All right, so I will just say, number one, firstly, the MEPS presents a lot of benefits. Apart from the cost saving, apart from the cost saving, it also gives us this it also sets a clear pathway for protecting not just your homes, all right, the money that you use in buying units, all right, paying for electricity bills, but it also serves your national grids, all right? And then for Nigeria, it was really an honor for us to have our National Cooling Action Plan. And you know what this National Cooling Action Plan, the NCAPS, did for us was to accelerate the market penetration for the energy efficient appliances in the country. Not just that, but also gave us the will to adopt low GWP, low GWP free refrigerants, and also to contributing to what we call sustainable development. And you know the sustainable development goals, we have SDG goals for climate change, that's number one. Also for energy access, all right? And also for sustainable cities and communities. So this MEPS addresses all these goals in the sustainable development, all right? So for Nigeria, we took it ahead to say, apart from developing these MEPS, last year, after the development of the MEPS, you know, it was not just a desk work. It was not a desktop work. We did not just sit down to develop it and say, okay, a few persons. We went through a lot of processes, consulted with manufacturers, consulted with the Standard Organization of Nigeria. We consulted with a lot of stakeholders to ensure that we have their own contributions. What do they think about this? All right, and also we also defined that energy efficiency is not energy conservation. There's a difference between energy conservation and energy efficiency, all right? And we brought in the customs because they're the ones at the borders. We also brought in immigration. So now, what do these customs know? The energy efficiency is like, we have this is energy efficiency, and we also have the labeling scheme, where new products that conforms with the standard are being labeled before they come into the country, all right? So as at 2022, 3 years ago, we noticed an influx of clean, or what I call it, sustainable cooling appliances, or I will just say sustainable energy efficient appliances coming to the country. Not just for now, we don't have, it's in the pipeline for refrigerants or for refrigerators. But for now, we have just MEPS for ACs, air conditioners. And what also helped us is because we didn't just go with the flow, okay, we have what we call global international practices. But what we did, we took, Nigeria is a kind of a complex country, all right? We have different climate condition, all right? We have different climatic conditions in the regions, the north, south, and the east and west. So we took that into consideration, and we had to adopt what we call seasonal energy efficiency ratio, which was developed by United for Efficiency U4E, the UNEP U4E. So we went with the metrics that they developed, which is called this, or I call it SEER. Okay, I call it SEER, S-E-E-R. So we went with that because we had to take into consideration what is the climatic condition in the north and in the south. And also, we also did this mapping, or will I say assessment, on the various usage of various demand for energy, like in the north and in the south. There's something we call You know, during peak periods or during heat season, all right, during hot season, you notice that a lot of people really depend on cooling. And from our assessment, we also realized that during heat, so many people rely on cooling services, on cooling, you know, to warm, to keep their homes cool, also to save food, to preserve their food. So at that time, the energy, everybody will stretch. The more the energy consumption, or the more the energy demand, the more the increase in energy consumption, and then this stretches a lot. It makes the national grid to collapse. So now we went to the what's it called, awareness. We carried out an awareness, not just traditional media. We also leveraged the social media, as Ghana had earlier spoken about. We ensured that we simplified the message. The message was simplified. I don't know if you guys know what we call pidgin English. Yeah, in Nigeria, most times we communicate with pidgin English. So the message was simplified, all right? And we made sure that the common man on the street, especially these technicians, understand the message perfectly, all right? And for now, thank God, like that last year, as I said earlier, the MEPS was passed to the Standard Organization of Nigeria, and then it was approved. Now it has been published. You can find it online, you know, so you can actually follow it for your country. And so, but for the implementation, we don't just want to go and then force everybody to just, we need to give them time. So the implementation will start by December 2026. So we need to give time, and then we are also training with the help of UNEP, as that last year, first week of December, we had a hands-on technical training for technicians in Kano State, that's up north, where we have a very big market. Also, we are also planning the same for manufacturers. That is on Monday. Anyways, I'm here. So in Lagos, because I don't know if you all know that Lagos is one of the most populous cities in Nigeria, not just in Nigeria, in Africa. So we are also having the same thing. UNIDO is sponsoring, UNEP is sponsoring, UNDP is sponsoring, and then we took it again up to training industrialists on energy efficiency, how most of their products or most of their equipment that are not energy efficient, you know, this is how they can switch. And a lot of things have been happening, and then we did not just stop there. We took it ahead, we took it forward to bring in gender. I don't know if you've heard about, we trained students. Okay, for now we are targeting tertiary institutions.
Exactly.
We brought in female engineers, undergraduates, and we trained them, and we now developed a kind of awarding system.
Okay, so I think, okay, well,
Yeah, no.
just that aspect where the students have been encouraged to take up, so that you have a new generation that is coming up. You know, so it looks like time is far behind, and a lot of stories to tell. For us, what we are saying is that a lot can be done. As focal persons, let's learn from each other. We can continue from here on the WhatsApp page, on the emails, exchange best practices, and learn from each other.